Thank you so much, everyone, for taking time again out of your day to spend this time on this very special Enable webinar. If you haven't attended any of my boot camps, my name is Stefanie Hammond. I am the head nerd that's responsible for all things sales and marketing here at Enable. And in today's session, we're going to be talking about how to better position yourself as a value-added partner. And so when I talk about that, what do I mean? Well, when we look at the MSP industry today, we see that the market, it's shifted. You know, I talk about this reality in a lot of my boot camps. Buyers of managed services today, they're much better educated than they were, you know, even 5 years ago. And so as a result, a lot of MSPs are finding themselves in this extremely competitive market landscape that they're trying to sell their services to win new clients. But the MSPs that are garnering the highest level of success these days are the ones that have gone and reframed their conversations that they're having with prospects. So instead of focusing on the technology behind their services, they're transitioning those sales conversations more towards how can the MSP benefit and bring value to that prospect's business. And there is no company that does that better than my very special guest who's joining us today, Patrick Layton. Patrick is the VP of Managed Services at Impact Networking. They have offices all throughout the US. I know Patrick travels quite a bit, so I think he's joining us out of Chicago today. So welcome, Patrick. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Stefanie. Great to see you again.
Yeah, I know. It's been a little while, eh?
I'm in our headquarters this week in Lake Forest, Illinois. So right outside.
Okay, awesome. Perfect. I know you're always out and about. It's like, where's Patrick today?
Fun that way.
So just before we get started and with our conversation with Patrick, my marketing department, they're making me mention the special promo that we're having. So for those of you that are listening, watching us today, if you're currently not an Enable partner, if you're not using our RMM for your business, we're offering you the opportunity to switch your RMM over to Incentral. For $1 a month for the first up to 12 months. And so this will allow you to switch over to Incentral, try it out, rather than having to wait until your existing RMM vendor contract has completed. So obviously there's some terms and conditions to this promo. There's the URL that's on the screen if you wanted to check that out. So, okay, good, I'm done my marketing promo. So we're gonna get started. If anybody has questions, we have everybody on mute, and that's just to maintain call quality. But if you have any questions, just put them into the question panel, and then I will do my best to get your questions to Patrick as best as I can. This session is being recorded. So if you wanted to listen to it afterwards, or if you had other people maybe on your sales team, marketing team that wanted to listen to today's conversation, this session is being recorded. And then it'll be sent out to everybody that registered in about a couple of weeks once marketing kind of gets it all cleaned up. All right, so I think that's it for slides. So perfect. So basically what I wanted to do then, Patrick, is maybe start with giving us a little bit of an introduction about yourself. You know, talk about your background at Impact, you know, kind of how you came to be the VP of Managed Services at Impact.
Sure. So I've been with Impact a little over 8 years. I was hired to transform a 3-person break-fix, time and materials-based MSP into a true managed service program. Prior to Impact, I worked at another small MSP here in the Chicagoland market. I owned a small MSP before that down in the Tampa market. And before that, I've been at every .com startup. I've been in big government. I was at UPS for a while. I've kind of been all over the board. I think a little history on Impact, just to set the stage a little bit about what we're going to talk about. Impact is about a $180 million organization. We lead with managed IT service and managed cybersecurity service, but we also offer managed marketing. We do full stack development. We do low code development. We do ERP implementations on the Dynamics platform. We do business process automation. We do electronic content management. And if you go all the way back to the beginning, we started as a printer and copier company. We still are very successful with that business as well.
Perfect. And I think a lot of our conversation today is going to be around, because I've known you for 8 years, and that's how I I was your account manager when you guys joined us to venture into the managed services space. So thinking about kind of that framework where you were, you know, a copier company selling boxes, comparing features from one box to another, how did you develop the sales org from that? Like, how has that evolved? And what does the typical sales process look like today for the managed services division at Impact?
Yeah, I'd say I'm somewhat lucky to have ended up in a printer company that wanted to do this right and was willing to invest, because the biggest difference that I see between this type of company and MSPs is copier companies know how to sell. They are a true sales organization. Talk about numbers more than any other company I've ever been part of. And it was a slow transition as we got our program built. You know, we have about 130 general sales reps that can sell any one of those services. And in the traditional sense, before the pandemic, they were out in the field knocking on doors, like literally from 9 to 4. They weren't allowed to be in the office. They were in their territories, knocking on doors, generating leads, talking to prospective clients. And then when the pandemic hit, we had to take a team that was very good at knocking on doors and turn them into a telemarketing type sales team, and some mixed results there. And that's really what started our transition into the way we sell now, which is defining our, what we call our ICP, or our ideal client profile, and really targeting the medium business. So when you look at SMB, the way our fixed fee 5-year non-cancelable contracts work is by having a long-term partnership with the client. What we're really selling is our services. Of course, all of the IT work comes along with that, but the way we do it is a little unique. And we spend a lot of time up front in that pre-sales process, making sure the client understands how we're going to deliver service and what we're going to bring back to them if we go through our paid assessment process.
Right. Okay. But going back to where you're saying it was kind of a slow evolution. So your copier salespeople, again, they were used to selling boxes and this features versus this features. How did the training change to get them to sell services versus selling boxes, like and selling a commodity?
Yeah, we put a lot of effort into really training and tenuring our sales reps. You know, before the pandemic and the way we used to sell, we were very good at bringing in young professionals, type A personalities right out of college, and get them a little bit of knowledge to get in the streets and knock on doors. And that works, but it doesn't provide tenure. And when you're trying to sell services, you're typically talking to a different person in the organization. You know, the person that can make the $5,000 a month copier decision is typically not the person that's making the $30,000 a month managed IT decision, right? So figuring out how to talk to the C-suite was very important. And when we defined our ICP, and making sure you have alignment before you move forward in your process, so that you're actually talking to the guy that can make the decision and is going to be the actual buyer. That's where a lot of the training started. So when we defined our ICP, we started with my division.
So I'm just gonna stop for you 1 second. I understand what ICP means. Maybe we should, for people that are listening, what do we mean when we talk about ICP?
So it's the people that we want as clients, right? They're mature enough as a business that our services actually could be beneficial. They're no longer the business owner that's wearing 17 hats and just trying to keep the lights on. They've actually matured enough that we can come in with our program. And what we really talk about is using technology for gain. There's a lot of MSPs out there that can do the break fix stuff and reactive and proactive service and provide CIO service, but it's still just in the conversation is really still that break fix repair loop, where your PBRs are focused on how many tickets you closed and the type of projects you're doing in the service. And it's never really, the conversation never really moves past that point to talking to businesses about how they use technology. And I believe that's where the landscape is. Like I said, you can find a managed service provider to do the IT work for you. And we can do that. We do it very well. But we want to evolve that conversation into how can you use technology for gain. We really look at it in a couple ways. One is, how do we affect your bottom line? How do we help you use technology to have a better bottom line? How to gain some kind of competitive advantage against your competition? And in some aspects, through some of the services we offer, is just removing or reducing data entry type tasks, right? Which actually have a real ROI attached to them. Sometimes it's hard to show ROI on a managed service because the work you're putting in is helping evolve that company. But when you're doing things like removing data entry type work, you can actually attach an ROI to that and have some success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're really focusing on like the key business drivers that are important to business owners, as opposed, again, kind of the technology behind the services that you're delivering.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having that business level conversation. Perfect.
Yep.
Now, I know you had mentioned managed marketing. I know Impact has its own internal marketing department. How has that evolved, when you were spinning up the MSP side of the business?
So it's actually been really important as we figured out how to get away from the young entry level rep and just turning 50 to 60% of them every 4 or 5 months. We realized that in order to really be successful in this marketplace, especially with a mature mid-sized business, you have to tenure out your sales team. They have to have a constant evolution. So you teach them in the beginning the basics of what we're looking for in that ICP market. You teach them the basics of using a CRM. But when they get past a certain point, you can actually start using technology tools internally for gain as well. So we're really good at practicing those same things that we talk to our clients about. So we've invested heavily in some really good sales and marketing tools like Zoom Info and HubSpot and SalesLoft, and doing cadencing and making sure our touches, when we're touching the client, that it's a planned cadence, that we understand the way we're going after that market. And the way we do that with our sales teams is through, we've built what's called the Impact Leadership Institute. I think that team has about 18 people on it now. And it's a internal training educational program. And with our sales team, we take them down a 3-year journey where they're touching 2 to 3 times a year. They're either in classroom or they're learning through other modalities. And we're gradually moving them, tenuring them out as they become a little more mature and they get a little more experience and they've had some opportunities to work through our process. The rest of the training kind of meets them where they're at in their progress towards getting to the point where the phone calls that they're making and the reach outs that they're doing are specific and targeted after the type of client that we want.
Right. Okay. So I guess looking at the way your sales org is broken down, so you made a little comment there where kind of the telemarketing didn't start off with the greatest of success that you wanted. So are your hunters expected to do their own prospecting, or do you have those two roles kind of separated out?
So the hunters, they actually do, once they land a client, they are attached to that client for the life of the contract. So they kind of do both, but they're paid and they're incentivized to go find new business, right? So that's really what they're doing. We still knock on doors. We're still evolving that telemarketing program as well. But we're just doing it instead of the shotgun approach where it's just spray and pray and touch as many people as you can. It's much more dedicated and much more deliberate in who we're talking to and how we're talking to them.
Yeah, because you went and focused on developing your ideal client profile, that ICP, so that you have a good idea and everybody's trained on what is the exact type of client that we want for Impact.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Love it. So and I love the way that you're talking about how, there's a cadence and sales is matched to that cadence. So there's a real alignment between your marketing processes and your campaigns and what sales is doing. Has there been, because I always get this question when I do office hours, is there a successful marketing formula that has worked for Impact to help expand your MSP business?
I think so. I mean, there's a lot of things that we do. I mean, we're doing this webinar with you right now. We host a lot of these as well. Thought leadership is a common term that we use inside of Impact, getting information out, educational information about our services from that thought leadership standpoint. So a lot of webinars, lots of video. We also invested in a video marketing platform where our reps can send video messages instead of just email messages. So We're doing that as well. So it's a combination of those things, and it's our sales leadership and our marketing leadership collaborating together on how we're going to drive this, and then the ILI training team picking up those pieces and figuring out a strong cadence to move these reps through and to tenure them out.
Yeah. And again, just it's the alignment that I love hearing you talk about, because I'll talk with partners or do office hours and get the questions, and it seems a lot of cases marketing is kind of doing its own thing over here, and then sales is doing its own thing over here, and you're kind of working against each other.
Yeah.
When you're supposed to have this the common goal of finding leads for us to go and talk to.
Yeah, one of the real important parts of how we do that marketing, especially when you're putting a lot of power in the individual rep's hands, is making sure that no matter what video you happen to stumble across from Impact, that the baseline message is still the same. And that message is, how do we help you use technology for gain? And if we can do that, the different ways you talk about it or the different types of education that you provide can be a little bit unique, right? Every salesperson's got their own little way of going about talking to their clients. As long as that baseline message is standardized, then they can go ahead and be unique and do what they do best, which is, helping clients understand that there's a lot more to IT than just keeping the lights on, and that's how we like.
Exactly. And so, you've referenced this phrase a couple of times, technology for gain. Would you be able to kind of expand a little bit more beyond, like, what does that mean? How the salespeople kind of position that when they're talking?
Yeah, I mean, it has to start with the nuts and bolts of IT, making sure your network is at a stable and secure enough place to operate from. Obviously, when you have issues, you have a good support team to rely on. But once you get past that, your PBRs change from project static and ticket closure to how you're using your technology. I always give this kind of lame example, but I think it really hits the spot. I talk about if our CIOs that are managing our accounts, and you could call them technical account managers or success team, whatever you want to call them, when we get through the baseline and we get that client to a pretty stable platform, we talk about being in maintenance mode. And what does the conversation start to look like? So a great example would be talking to a client about, hey, maybe this quarter we closed 50 tickets for you and 35 of them were related to QuickBooks. And let me explain to you that there's nothing wrong with QuickBooks. It actually works the way it's supposed to, but you've grown as an organization. You've kind of outgrown that platform. Maybe you've bastardized it a little bit. You're putting data in fields that maybe it wasn't meant for. And now I can bring value to the client and say, listen, you've outgrown this platform. I have the data that backs up the amount of time we're spending trying to support this platform. Wouldn't it make more sense for me to bring in my Dynamics 365 ERP team and let them show you how a mature organization can take advantage of a true fully functioning ERP versus just trying to run QuickBooks? And when you have that conversation with a client from a point of knowledge versus my sales rep just calling them every quarter and saying, hey, you're really happy with our IT, can we talk about ERP? That's a different conversation because we're the trusted advisor now and we're bringing them real data to make informed decisions on. So that's kind of what I mean by helping them use technology for gain. You can't just throw software or solutions to a problem that the client doesn't even understand that they have yet, right? So that educational track is really important in the way we deliver our service.
Excellent. So, so with your existing clients, like, do you have a set cadence in terms of when you have those types of conversations? Like, do you do like the quarterly business reviews or whatever you call them, technical strategy reviews?
We do.
With your clients?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand the way we go to market. So we start out with a paid assessment, and we've already set the stage with the client that this is going to be 5 years. It's going to be non-cancelable. It's more than the nuts and bolts IT, but it's a consultancy. And once we get through that, when we bring a solution back to a client after we do our really in-depth business assessment, it covers all of the technical, but we interview a lot of people during that assessment. It's operational. It's where's your business going and where do you want it to go? What are you trying to do with your business? It's a financial conversation. We really love to uncover all those hidden costs and what they were actually spending and be able to show them that. And so when we come to the table, we typically only bring one solution, and we will say things like, we've done all of the legwork to say this is the right solution from all these different vantage points. And then we sell that on a 5-year agreement. And the goal, again, is get that network set up with a base level of security so that you can operate, so that the employees of that business can come in, turn on their computer, and most of the time things work as expected and they have access to the things they should, and also don't have access to the things they shouldn't. And so when you're in that model, typically 6 to 12, and sometimes in the bigger ones, maybe 18 months. It's the onboarding and doing all the remediation to get them to that level. But once they get to that maintenance mode, that's when our PBR conversation starts shifting to how you're using technology and really looking at your business process and how it lines to technology. And that's one of the ways Impact is really unique, in that a lot of MSPs can do the IT work, but they need a partner for all of the other things. And because we operate with all of those other services, even if you're not using Impact for one of those other services, we can still be your liaison to the partner you are using, because we work in that industry and we understand how it works. So we give our clients a competitive advantage in making sure that they're not, being spoken over like a lot of vendors like to do, right?
Yeah, no, awesome. So a question has come in, Patrick, and the question is the average customer size, if you're able to kind of share in terms of revenue and number of endpoints.
Sure. So we target our ICP for the managed IT program is a minimum of a $5 million organization. Ideal annual revenue is between 20 and 200 million. Minimum employee size is 20. I would say we really don't want the 20 user networks. They're usually not mature enough yet. So the ideal is 100 to 500, multiple locations, a growing business. Maybe they have upcoming office relocations, maybe a lot of the change in the local government compliance standards. We're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of conflicting standards between the different states' local government compliance standards. So those are the types of things we're looking for. Businesses that are growing and that have a true business plan, and that have maybe grown up in the old world of technology where you had to bend your business process to fit the technology that you chose. And nowadays, you can actually define your business process however you want it, and you can make the technology work for you. And that's where Impact really comes in and helping bring all of those solutions together under one umbrella, one partnership. It makes it easier for the client as well, right? They don't have 17 different partners that they're working with that all love to point the finger at each other.
Exactly. So given kind of the way you defined your ICP, at the upper end, I would assume that you're doing a lot of co-managed at that level.
That's almost exclusively what we do now. We used to, when we started this, when I first started with you, that 20 user network and the $1,500 a month payment, we were all high-fiving.
Yeah, we were excited when we got that.
Right? We really don't want to take on a deal that's less than $10,000 a month, because we've learned now over time, right? 5-year agreements. So last year was really the first year that I had renewals come up. And if you look at some of those early deals I did with those small clients, you could see that in the way we provide service, we didn't make any money. You can't be profitable at that low of a payment with the way we provide all-inclusive access to our services. So we figured out right about that $10,000 mark allows us to maintain at least a 50% profit margin. And that's really what they say best in class is in the MSP space. Our leadership is pretty unique, and they want to see 60, 70% margins, which all my peer groups tell me is impossible, but that's what we're shooting.
Awesome. And I like the comment that you kind of made there, like, when you first started out, you were very excited, because I was there with you, getting the 20 user, the $1,500 a month. How did you move into the higher end? Because I know I get questions from partners a lot. Like, how do you make that leap from, the $1,500 a month to really start pushing for, like you said, minimum 10 grand? Like that's a big gap to leap over.
And there's a couple things. So obviously, sales rep comp plans started to get more incentivized to go after the type of deal we wanted. We also, because we have those general sales reps, we have an overlay, what we call a BDS, business development specialist, for everything we sell in every branch. So if a rep says, hey, I have this IT or I have this cybersecurity opportunity, they get their overlay to go on that first meeting. And the goal is to sell that assessment after doing some discovery. Those guys toe the line that I tell them to toe, right? So we started pushing for, we're not going to allow you to write an assessment for under $10,000 a month. And that $10,000 payment for the assessment aligns with what we think the monthly spend is going to be for that particular client. And so even though a rep might be going, hey, this is a great opportunity, let's sign this assessment, the specialist will push back and say, they're not aligned. We don't have leadership in the room. They don't understand non-cancelable. They don't understand long-term partnership. And so there's a little bit of an internal struggle. So aligning the comp plans to match and push those two people to really work towards that same common goal was one technique we used. Raising the minimum for our assessment is another technique that we used. And then we just start showing stats from the current client base that we have. Every chance we get, we start showing that, hey, look at in this really small deal, just to do maintenance and take a handful of support calls every month has eaten up the entire payment. And we can't make any money. And how do you grow as a company if you're not profitable, right? And we are on a very fast growth and high trajectory. In fact, we've been open 22 years now. We grow at 26% year over year. That's pretty unheard of, right? In almost any industry. And so providing the information back to the team about what's actually happening in these accounts is the best way to go show them, because like I told you in the beginning, that general sales rep is attached to the account for the life of the contract. So now if we go sell a deal that we really didn't want, or maybe it's a little too small or not priced right, well, now that sales rep's eating up time dealing with an unhappy client instead of out prospecting for new business. So it kind of works by keeping them attached because they have to deal with it as well, right? So when we're set up with the right type of client, our program just runs and the rep comes to PBR meetings with us and they kind of sit back and they add some value. But those accounts are much easier because we're aligned with the right people. The client that bought from us understands what we're trying to do and they're bought into that philosophy. That's the biggest.
And I think that is such a valuable point that you've made is defining who you want to do business with, understanding what is the right type of client to be successful with. Because if you can get that quality prospect that turns into that quality lead, that turns into that quality client, it just makes it, for a quality partnership all the way through.
And then those clients are very happy to give referrals. And as long as you're not afraid to ask for referrals, because most will give them if they're happy with you, that's how you grow your business. Getting away from the mentality of I want every client that might say yes. We don't. We want to really make sure they're aligned to our program and they understand what we're trying to do. And when you do that, especially in a mature business, price isn't really a conversation. I could go in at $30,000 a month or $35,000 a month, and it's probably not going to be much to talk about. They might want to negotiate a little, but if they bought into the process and we walk them through our entire assessment process and our proposal process and how we're going to affect their business, by the time we show them the price, they're ready to sign. They just want to get going. Right? Because business leaders know if you spend money on the right things, you're going to have success with that.
Exactly. Now, because what you're saying is just brings warmth to my heart, because I'm doing a 3-part sales series exactly on what you're talking about, starting tomorrow, starting with the discovery process and the right set of questions to ask to make sure there's a good fit between your prospect and your MSP, because the goal is sell them on the assessment. And then you do the assessment, and then if you do a quality enough assessment and you make it, get the operational business stuff as well as the security stuff, that's everything that's going to help you build a really compelling proposal. So starting kind of at the discovery, like, is there, I go through my boot camp, questioning and how to structure that conversation, but I would be interested to hear how did your team kind of what are the main discovery questions that they need to ask, and what does that process look like?
The discovery in the pre-sale stage before we sold the assessment, is that what you're asking about?
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously the IT stuff, how many users, how do you operate, what are your big trouble points, how much do you think you spend on IT, all the general stuff that allows us to get an idea of where we think their monthly payment's going to be. Because one of the things that we don't say to every client it's going to be $200 per person per month or $300 or $400. But what we will say is, once I've done the assessment and I know what the future state of your network is going to look like, I can tell you that it's going to be $250 a user a month, right? So once I get to that point, I can give them that number. But we really try to stay away from the price conversation as long as possible and really talk about business outcomes. And most companies that are talking MSPs probably have an MSP and they're probably unhappy. That's why they're talking to us, right? So if you understand that and you understand the challenges that most MSPs face, you can have that conversation with them. You can empathize with them. You can talk from their side of the table, right? And then you can bring value of why the nuts and bolts are important, the patching and all the day-to-day stuff. But what you're really after, again, is how do you use your technology for gain? It's no longer just about keeping the lights on and trying to stay a little bit secure. It's really how do you make IT work for you? And if you can have that conversation, I think you'll see a lot more success.
Excellent. Okay. Now, we only have a few more minutes of our conversation today, but I did want to ask, are there any changes that are being made, whether to your sales training or to your messaging? We're talking about, maybe a possible recession. We could be in a recession. I think the judge is still out on that. But is there any changes that you're making in terms of your sales messaging, your training, to address kind of the financial uncertainties? Like, are you seeing it? How are you prepping your sales team for that?
I mean, I don't think we're overblowing it. We're certainly talking about it. In my opinion, I don't think any business is recession proof, but the fact of the matter is business can't run without IT, and cybersecurity isn't going anywhere. The risk is getting worse every single day. All the projections show that it's going to continue to get worse. Companies aren't going to stop investing. They're just going to choose where they invest. And I think they're going to be a little more deliberate. And so I think the MSP space has a lot of opportunity to grow even during a recession, because I think those companies that still try to maintain IT staffs in-house are going to lose employees, or they're going to have to lose employees, yet they still need to keep things moving, right? So I think in that true co-managed environment, there's lots of ways you could bring value. Maybe an internal IT staff shrinks, and the people that are left still have to be aligned with the business and run IT. And they can't spend their time like fixing your Outlook and your printer and patching. They need to be at a higher level. And so a managed service provider can come in and take that low-level stuff off of an internal IT team's plate and allow them to be successful as well. And when you can get the IT team to be the MSP champion because you're providing value to them and allowing them to go do more, now you can expand like crazy in that business, because you have an internal guy that knows the business, that knows technology, saying these guys are great partners and they have these great ideas. I think that works really well. So the recession really doesn't scare me. One of the benefits of the recession that I'm really looking forward to, hiring has been really challenging, right? And I think salaries for good IT professionals are super out of line. I mean, they've just been going up and up and up. And I think this recession is going to put more of them back into the marketplace. And I think it's going to correct itself. So I believe I'm going to get really good talent at a more palatable price, to be honest with you.
Exactly. So, when we talk about industry trends, like co-manage, we believe that as well here at Enable. Like, I'm working on a brand new boot camp focused on co-manage, because we're seeing that as being kind of again, 2023, I think the MSPs, as you said, recession resilient. And I think co-managed is going to be a good play for them if they're not doing that today. So you're kind of seeing that as an industry trend as well then.
I would agree. I mean, what IT guy really wants to do patching and clean up viruses and fix printers? Most of them don't. And if they do, why wouldn't they want to do that for an MSP? Why are they just going to work at some company? So I think you're going to see MSPs really grow because of that.
Excellent. Yeah, same here. Like, we really see it as another opportunity for MSPs, and the way we're kind of designing the boot camp is, kind of, you're not doing any co-managed. How can we take you from like 0 to 60, so you can start finding that and developing that new revenue stream. So it
certainly helps the conversation with the IT people that you might be talking with. If they think you're trying to take their job, you're not getting in the door, right? They're not championing, they're not telling you anything. But if they think you're there to help them, and you are, the opportunities are endless, right?
Exactly. Like, I always talk about, it's a pie. With co-managed, you're just looking to take one or two pieces of that pie. You're not out there to grab the whole pie. You're just there to kind of help where needed and complement, wherever there might be any skills gaps or knowledge gaps, or even tools gaps in some instances. And so,
absolutely. Yeah, our co-managed program always leads with N-Central. We've heavily modified our instance, as you know, but renting N-Central to our clients so that IT staff can use it, and then tying that together with our documentation platform and our service desk for that low-level stuff is a pretty easy win into the co-managed space. We're both working from the same set of tools. We're using the same documentation. If we need to escalate to you, we're doing it inside of our custom ticketing platform. And so there's a lot of knowledge transfer and shared knowledge. And in most of those cases, I have a pretty big staff. They're helping bring that IT team up and helping grow that team. And again, that goes a very long way. When they think you're your partner and you're acting as a partner, it's really a win all the way around.
Agreed. And so maybe a question that just popped into my head, like, so you're starting off with the tools, your documentation. How do you grow that co-managed relationship so that, again, we're not looking for the whole pie, but we're always looking to grow the share of wallet with our existing clients. So, what has been successful for you guys in growing that co-managed?
I mean, taking the time through the people that are managing those accounts to actually look at the ticket data and try to derive trends and what's happening, and helping that business see where they're really spinning their wheels, where they might be wasting time, where they're not solving problems at the root cause. There's lots of opportunity. Also, once you get to know the people, it's amazing how much they'll tell you about where they're struggling. We spend a lot of time talking to end users, even after the assessment, and once we get involved, we really want to hear what the end user thinks. It's really easy for the CFO to say, hey, that accounting package switch we made was a home run, everybody loves it. And then you actually go talk to the accountants and they're like, it's 37 more clicks than it used to be and I hate it. There's a disconnect there, right? And if we could uncover that and start to show how you can get to a better spot, that's a real good way to grow more business out of that existing account.
I couldn't agree with you more. As someone that's, I really have always been on, I've been with Enable for 18 years, but I've kind of always been on the account management level. And it is amazing sometimes the little disconnect between perceptions with the C-suite and then what's really happening down below. So
we tell our team all the time, take a look at the struggles that we have internally, the things that frustrate you. Your clients are probably going through that as well, and try to take those lessons and bring them to the client. And, when you use empathy to talk about these things with your clients, it goes a long way. So we spend time in our training talking about empathy and how to relate to people, how to turn perceived big problems into the reality of what they are, and find root cause problem solving, right? That really drives the business forward.
So important. Well said. So another question came in. What are some uncommon red flags you look for with prospective clients to know how to avoid them?
Uncommon red flags. I mean, looking at their financials is something that we always do, and especially the way we go to market. Most of the time, it's one monthly payment that includes all the hardware, software, licensing, everything bundled in. And to do that, we're using a financial partner. And so asking for financials and understanding what the business looks like, doing your research on what their growth has looked like. If the business tells you, the business leaders tell you one thing, but the data doesn't support what they were talking about, those are red flags. I think you could get through that. If your discovery process asks the right questions, I think you uncover that stuff pretty quickly. Now, a rep, of course, still wants to sell the assessment, right?
Yeah.
They want the opportunity. But the specialist will typically pull back and say, hey, we're not aligned on the 5-year non-cancelable, or we don't have the actual decision maker in the room, and we don't believe that you're going to be able to take everything I tell you and go sell it up the chain. So we spend a lot of time in that pre-sale stage, validating the 5-year, validating that it's non-cancelable, validating that the decision makers need to be in the room, or I'm not willing to sell the assessment and go through the process. So if you do that up front, I think you weed the ones out. I think it's pretty easy. Our success.
Now, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're right now about a 70%, so we're winning 7 of 10 assessments. I'd like to get that closer to 9 of 10, right? Because every time we lose one, we typically can go back through the process and go, yep, we didn't align ourselves like we were supposed to right here. This is where this went the wrong way, and this is why we weren't able to close the deal. We could do it almost every single time.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the benefits when you have a sales process, right? Because, again, I'm doing a whole 3-part sales series this month on it. And one of the questions that I asked as one of my polls is, do you have a structured sales process? Because how can you determine where, if you did lose, so thank you for confirming what I'm going to be talking about, going back and looking at that structure you have in place, and where do we maybe miss a step? Because I've had many partners tell me, and you're just one of them again, that if we lost a deal or we didn't win a deal, it's because we didn't follow what we should have followed, and it's kind of the kick in the pants then.
One of my favorite ones is when you get all the way through and you have the decision makers and they say, okay, we're going to bring this to our board next month, and that's the first time you heard that they had a board and you didn't know. Things like that are the little gotchas that, you know, we do our assessment, we're getting paid for it, but it's a loss leader. We don't make money on the assessment. We're really charging that money for skin in the game and to really prove that the client's serious. But if we miss one of those things and we do all this time on this assessment, typically 100 hours or more to do the assessment, that's just wasted time for everybody, right? That's time that my team's not working on other assessments or bringing clients on board or just doing all the other work that we have to do. So we're very conscious of what that looks like. I really do want to get our win rates to about 90%. I know it's going to be tough to do, but those 3 that we lose out of 10 every time,
you know why?
That, right? So
yeah, exactly. Now, do you get pushback from when you're trying to sell the assessment? Like, you know, you have companies that come to say, well, I'm looking at a couple MSPs and this one doesn't charge. Why do you charge? Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, we talk to them about what the reality of the situation is. Most of those free assessments that some MSPs do is deploy some tool set and get some technical report that says you don't have endpoint protection and you're not patching, but they're not looking at the business and the finance. And our assessment document, and we'll show prospective clients some sample documents, our assessments are 100 to 200 pages long typically. And they talk about the entire environment and what the true business effect of the decisions they made and the technology debt that they have are, and how our program addresses that to, again, get out of that break, fix, repair loop, get to a stable environment so that you could talk about technology for gain. And that's really how it works. If you shift your focus away from, I can be the IT department, to I can be your technology partner, it's a different conversation.
Yeah, just changing that mindset and changing a couple of keywords and how you present in your messaging. So I guess maybe my last question for you, Patrick, is, you know, because you started the managed services line of business at Impact. Any like 1 or 2 top key lessons that you've learned that maybe you would want to share with maybe some of the smaller MSPs that are starting out today? They're looking to kind of, you know, make the leap like Impact has.
I mean, the focus on the sales strategy couldn't be more important. I think I said it in the beginning of this conversation. Copier companies knew how to sell it. Every MSP that I've been with or been around and in peer groups, they don't know how to sell. They get excited by signing 5 new deals a year. We sign 15 new deals a month. That's the difference, right? It's because we focus on sales. The company is focused on sales. I hear new engineers all the time are like, oh my God, all you talk about is the numbers. Where are we at? I said, well, driving new sales creates revenue, which creates opportunity and upward mobility for you. And that's what this company was built for. So if the sales engine is humming the way it's supposed to, we are consistently growing and everybody has new opportunities to grow their career. And that's how you tenure people. So I would say to all the MSPs that don't have a focus on sales, that's where you're missing it, right?
Yeah.
That's how your business grows, is through new revenue opportunities. So I think the focus on sales and defining who do you want your clients to be and what is your process to go land those clients, and then staying consistent with it, constantly reviewing it, constantly iterating on how it works, it is the difference. I mean, we switched away from our CRM about 2 years ago, which was very copier centric, and it was great for that business. It didn't work for what we're trying to do now with cadencing and touch points. And so we had to make a heavy investment into Dynamics and Zoom Info and SalesLoft and all those other tools. And then you have to learn how to use them. And then you have to get the team to use them. I would say right now, it's probably about 20% of our overall sales staff consistently sells managed IT and cybersecurity. If I could get that to 50%, I'd be 3 times the size I am right now, and we're already quite large, right? So yeah, that consistency is so important, and tenuring people is so important for more and more people to grasp the way you do it, and then get better at it, and then get their feedback on how to continuously iterate on it.
Well said. And that was going to be my final question. You know, what challenges are you still dealing with today, you know, in your role as VP? So you just basically said, if I can take it from 20 to 30 to 50,
that's it. I think the other big challenge that we're seeing, I know that the education is starting to get there with cybersecurity, but business leaders still don't have separate budgets. They think it's part of the IT budget. Yeah. And they don't really understand the difference between managed IT operations and managed cybersecurity. And so that consistent message that's just repeated over and over and over. I used to be the one to go to all the branches and do sales trainings about our services. And I remember early on, like maybe year two, I was creating my version 102 of sales training. And our vice president of sales said, what are you doing? There's never a 102. It's 101 over and over and over and over and over until you get all of the reps. Because of the turnover and because of the way they learn, you just have to keep repeating that same message while you're iterating on how the process works. The message is pretty much the same.
Yeah, no, well said. Any other questions? Just throw them into the question panel. We're coming up, I think, 45 minutes in, which I think was the allotment that we had for our conversation today. So if there's anybody else on the line that wants to put some questions into the panel for Patrick, we'll get them in. So there is just a poll that we would like to take to, how valuable you found the session today. Again, when we ask you to take time out of your day to spend with us, we want to make sure that we are presenting you with, the best kind of content. So if people listening wouldn't mind letting us know, providing us with our feedback, we much appreciate it. And then once again, don't forget that we have the promo that's going on, the switch to N Central for $1 a month. Again, you'll be able to find all the details on our website. So Patrick, thank you. Absolutely appreciate taking the time out of your very busy day to spend with us. It's been a thrill kind of catching up with you because I haven't talked to you like this in a little while.
Yeah, it's been a while now that you're not doing the role you were doing, but
I know.
I love talking with you. I'm happy to help anytime. Please feel free.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So again, thank you, Patrick. Remember, this session is being recorded. The question did came in asking about slides. This was just a general conversation. There wasn't any slides that we created because we just wanted to have kind of a conversation. But you will receive a copy of this recording once marketing kind of gets it all cleaned up. So if you had registered, you can expect to receive a copy of this recording probably in a week or so. Give them some time. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, rest of your week, and happy holidays, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.